I had briefly liked the page of Lisa Nandy MP. She's a Labour MP for Wigan, and she is one of the contenders to be the next Labour leader. She probably won't win. All the bookies are suggesting Keir Starmer as the front runner, but I'm disappointed by Lisa Nandy because I felt that I liked her page because I felt that she seemed like a level-headed centrist. She was saying some things that I thought, okay, well, she is at least prepared to listen to people. She's at least prepared to consider why Labour lost the election. And, she was on the doorstep listening to complaints. So I thought, okay, maybe she's worth watching. But I've just seen an interview where she done on This Morning with Piers Morgan and Susanna Reid, and it just made me think, no, she's no different from the regressive left trajectory that Labour is on. So basically, it was about the trans issue. Piers Morgan, okay, I get it. Piers Morgan is a controversial figure. I find him quite pompous sometimes. But fundamentally, what he was saying is something that I think a lot of people would agree with, that it is utterly absurd that the trans lobby is trying to impose this notion that there are up to 100 genders. And it's not just a matter of opinion, it's a fact that they're actually imposing this into education circuits. And Morgan made that point, and Lisa Nandy, with a straight face, said maybe people like you, Pierce, need to take that seriously. Maybe you need to read it. So she's actually advocating this nonsense under the guise of tolerance, and she pointed out the high suicide rates for trans people and the mental health problems that children go through. Never mind the fact that it is dangerous to. I mean, there's a reason why transitioning, you have to be 16 to do it for the obvious health risks. I believe at 16. The very notion of trans children is a misnomer because legally you cannot have that transition until you're at least 16 years old. So it's a misnomer to talk about trans children. But it goes beyond this. Lisa Nandy recently signed a pledge or a document. I don't know precisely what form it took, but basically it was a move to try and expel women from Labour who feel that biology matters and who have been outspoken on the transgender issue. An example being columnist Julie Bindel. So this is really cloud cuckoo land. You have traditional Labour feminists, certainly not people I would always agree with, but they're now being threatened with expulsion from the party. For what reason? Because they argue that biology matters, that the definition of woman matters, and that when we're thinking of issues like competitive sports and prison, this matters. It has real world implications. I've long been concerned about the way that there is weaponization around how pronouns are defined and how we're seeing this increase in language policing. I do think the trans lobby is weaponizing it. And this goes well beyond saying, look, trans people get bullied, or, people may be hurt if the wrong pronoun is used. Just for the record, on a personal basis, I will use a preferred pronoun out of politeness. I'm not going to deliberately try to seek to hurt someone. So if I know a trans woman prefers her, I'll use that term, or most likely I'll just use her name. Easiest thing. What I'm not going to do though is change my entire vocabulary and start talking about wimicks or. I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but this is what is happening. When we're starting to see universities are absolutely pandering to it. Although universities, frankly, are becoming left-wing madrasas with group think. And if you think outside the box, then you're a bigot. What concerns me is when someone like Lisa Nandy, who I had put down as a level-headed centrist, when she is pandering to this, what hope does Labour have when they're prioritising issues like this? Tony Blair recently said they're making a big mistake to make issues like this their kind of central focus because the vast majority of the public do not care, except insofar as where the language policing is concerned. I think people will care when they think that they're going to get the police knocking on their door because they've used the wrong pronoun at work. That sounds like hyperbole, but there are some indications that this is actually happening. There have been examples where people have been paid visits by the police because they've got into an exchange with a transgender person online, it got a bit heated, and they used the wrong pronoun. What my take on with online issues is there's a huge difference between having a heated debate with someone and maybe there's some insults leveled both ways, um, versus like a long, ongoing campaign of harassment where you're threatening someone, where you're constantly bombarding them with messages. I do think that's a different matter, but what we're actually seeing is people being threatened with legislation over pronouns. It's sinister. It genuinely is sinister because there is. I mean, this is a bit like Sir Trevor Phillips being expelled from Labour over the grooming gangs thing and over his so-called Islamophobia. Different issue, but the same sort of issue around freedom of expression. And I do see Labour as being quite totalitarian in this regard. This is not about protecting minority rights. This is about trying to control thinking, trying to silence debate. And it's worrying. It really is, because a healthy democracy needs a strong opposition. Now, if this is the best Labour has to offer, pandering to totalitarian instincts, expelling respected public figures like Sir Trevor Phillips for telling the truth, it's very concerning. Labour needs to be prioritising bread and butter issues, the health service, crime, education. Instead, they're pandering to divisive identity politics and extremely fringe issues. And that would be like, okay, well, they've got the wrong priorities. But I don't think it can even be dismissed that way because legislation comes into this and potential legislation as well. I mean, it's sinister because we are going to see a situation in the near future if these Labour leftists have their way where we'll all have to watch what we say to the point of self-censoring. Now, that is not democracy. It's not. If people are bullying a trans person, yeah, I'm all for, bullying in any context is wrong. I'm not at all trivializing that. But I think it's fundamentally wrong that women are vilified as transphobes for no other reason than insisting that biology matters. I mean, in competitive sports, the idea that someone who had a penis can compete with women, biological women, even if that person has had the transition, their testosterone level is going to be higher. And it means that their female competitors, biologically female competitors, will always think, well, basically, I'm in here with a man. But they can't say that because that would be transphobic. Um, this is not a live and let live situation because the trans lobby isn't content with just saying, let me call myself what I want. I self identify as a man or I self identify as a woman. They're not content with that. They actually want to criminalize other people. They want to actually control how people think. That's what it comes down to. And I think it's quite sinister. So, with this trajectory that Labour is on, pitching to extreme identity politics and extreme fringe issues, when someone like Lisa Nandy, I would have expected this from some of the more left-wing candidates, but she was supposed to be the centrist. I don't know what Starmer's position on this stuff is, but I would not at all be surprised if he's going along as well. Because if he wasn't, if he had spoken out about any of this, if he'd said we shouldn't expel Sir Trevor Phillips, that's going too far, or we need to have internal debate within this party, that would have been in the news. It hasn't been, which means he endorses it. So I take no pleasure from this because I'm not a conservative. I believe that we need a strong opposition. But the way Labour is going, it's not it's not really interested in everyday issues. It's more interested, like I say, in pitching to these extreme fringe issues. I would say, so far as transgender rights are concerned, where the focus needs to lie is being very clear that there is a debate to be had. Um, Certainly considering issues like gender dysphoria, which, for in my opinion, for too long has just been dismissed, ignored as a factor in all of this. Um, and certainly trans bullying is wrong. But that is cases where trans people are, really, really being harassed, made to feel like second class citizens and so on. But there is a legitimate debate to be had over the definition of male and female. Biology matters. And what I have a problem with regarding the trans lobby is they're basically saying biology doesn't matter. Gender identity is the only thing that matters. Biology does matter for obvious reasons. I mean, if I ever ran for office, people would look back at a video like this and say, "Oh, look, Nathan Hazlitt said these things. He's a transphobic bigot." I can say I no wish no ill against individual trans people. Um, I support their right to identify whatever way they want. I can say those things, but you'll still be. It's a waste of time because you're still going to be dismissed in a certain way. So better to just go with what you believe in. Anyway, I've liked Lisa Nandy's page. I'm disappointed in her. I really thought she would be a voice of reason. I thought she would see beyond all this nonsense. I thought she would recognise that trying to silence debate within Labour is not the way forward. She has failed to speak out against the suspension of Sir Trevor Phillips for telling the truth. She has said Labour needs to listen more to concerns. Well, in the north of England, one of the biggest issues, certainly something that has really angered a lot of people, is the grooming gang scandal. What she said about that? Next to nothing. Has she accepted that there is a debate to be had over what is happening here? Over the fact that these Pakistani Mirpuri gangs literally see their victims as trash, as easy prey? These are very important questions because if this is not tackled, it will just happen again. That's why it matters. So Lisa Nandy's being insincere when she says she wants to listen to people if she is not going to candidly address these sort of issues. And if she is going to endorse moves within her party that means the silencing of debate. Punishing Sir Trevor Phillips for being a so-called Islamophobe when all he has done is tell the truth. It's repugnant. There has to be a scope in a democracy for criticizing religion. It's very different if people are stirring up hatred against individual Muslims, but there has to be scope for debating and criticizing and disliking religion. It has to be.